Hello everyone, welcome to the second lecture of fifth week of Scalable Data Mining course. In this lecture, we are going to look at the problem of count distinct. Okay, the problem is that of counting the number of distinct elements in a string. Okay, so as previously, let us assume that we have a universe U, okay, of elements from which some elements are chosen, okay. We assume that the actual number of distinct elements in the stream is m, okay, and we assume that we have seen n elements in the stream, okay. So there can be many practical applications. So one application is, let's say you want to count the number of distinct IP address passing through a switch. Okay, so this is one problem. So this problem can be useful in many settings. So for example, it may give you an idea of uh, how many so how important a particular node is, because if there are a lot of IP addresses going through a switch, that basically means that this is in the path of lot of traffic. So a lot of traffic is coming through this particular switch. Okay, so and you can also check if over period of time, if this pattern has changed or not. Okay, that would also uh, that also detects how uh, the routing tables are changing, and that may also help you detect some attacks. Okay, some kind of network attacks on the switches. Okay, so um, in this particular case, the set U is the set of all IP addresses. Okay, so this is basically your so if you use IPv4, it is 256 to the power. Okay, of course IP addresses can repeat. Okay, so you may have uh, a very large stream, but then the number of distinct IP addresses may be much smaller than the actual size of the stream. Okay, and you, as mentioned, you want to estimate the number of distinct elements in this tree. Okay, so what can be the other applications? So again, one more application is, suppose you count the number of you need to count the number of distinct k grams in a corpus. Okay, so k gram is a sequence of words. So let's say A is one word and B is one word. Okay, so AB is a 2 gram. Okay, so for example, if you have a text like A, B, C, D, E, then all the 2 grams here are A, B, B, C, C, D, and D, E. Okay, so these are the 2 grams. Okay, so many a times we estimate we estimate what is called a language model. Okay, uh, language model. Okay, so estimating the language model, one of the most widely used language model is what is called the bigram language model, where you basically estimate the counts of all the 2 grams of words in a particular text. Okay, so in this case we don't want to estimate the count, but we just want to estimate the number of distinct bigrams which you have seen in the corpus. So here you will read the corpus from beginning to end, and then you will try to estimate the number of distinct k-grams. Now note that uh, the, the total number of distinct k-grams may be very large, and you may not be able to store that many that many k-grams in the memory. So not only is the corpus, you cannot store the corpus in the memory, but you may not be able to store also the k-grams in the memory. So for example, in a large corpus, your k-grams could easily go into tens or hundreds of billions. Okay. Okay. So if, for example, if you are using 3 grams or things like that. Okay. So and it is sometimes not possible to store 100 billion 3 grams in the memory. Okay, depending on the computer memory that you may have. Okay. Now again, another application is the number of uh, phone numbers, okay, that made at least one call. Okay, again, you may want to track which all how many phone numbers that are issued by a particular phone company are actually active. Okay, and a phone number, so many times people take phone connections but they don't surrender the connection, and they just stop using that phone connection. Okay, so we want to know how many phone connections are actually active, and from that we can know how many are inactive. Okay, so here again, the universe is the number of phone numbers. Okay, so all phone numbers, and you have the caller and the callee uh, fields, and then you need to know the number of phone numbers that have made at least one call. So these are some of the practical applications of count distinct problem. Okay. So again, what are the naive and exact solutions? So so you have seen n elements from the stream. Okay, uh, and the stream has, let's say, elements from universe U. So suppose you start storing all the elements. Okay, and then you do some sort of a sorting and then a counting. Basically, this takes order in log u space. Okay, so if your n is like a few million, it may work, but as n increases, this will no longer work. Okay. uh, okay, now for example, you cannot so for all the examples that we have seen, this technique will probably not work, because this n, it is linear in n, and at some point in time your n will become too large. Okay, uh, of course, the other way is to use a bit array of size of u. Okay, so for each element in the universe you have a bit, and then you try to do this again. For many of the applications like IP addresses, this is 256 to the power 4 bits, and this you will not have this much of memory. Okay, so the question is, can we do this in less space? And in order to do this, we cannot do this exactly. Okay, so if we are very much interested in the exact count, okay, then we may not be able to do this. Okay. However, suppose we are happy with some kind of approximate solutions, okay, uh, then we may be able to come up with an algorithm. And a common kind of approximation that is used in this case are called epsilon delta approximations. So, what is the epsilon delta approximation? So there are two properties of the algorithm that we will describe. Okay. So the first property is that the output of the algorithm will be an approximation of the actual number. So this is the first property, and this approximation is given by the first parameter delta. Okay. So epsilon. Okay. So how is this so suppose your n is your actual number of distinct elements, and suppose you return n hat, which is your estimated number of distinct elements. Okay. Then uh, if these two conditions holds, that your n hat will always be greater than 1 minus epsilon times n, and it will always be less than 1 plus epsilon times n. Okay. So suppose you have your n here, so you multiply n by 1 plus epsilon. Okay. So this is 1 plus epsilon times n, and this is 1 minus epsilon times n. Okay. And if your answer lies within this region, okay, then it is called an epsilon approximation. Okay. So the second part of the thing is that our algorithm will be a randomized algorithm. So it will use random hash functions. Okay. And so the output will not always lie in this range. Okay. So it will lie in this range with a high probability of 1 minus epsilon. So 1 minus delta. So delta is the default probability of our algorithm. So there are two things. One is it will lie within a factor of 1 plus minus epsilon. Okay. And that it will lie with probability of 1 minus delta. Okay. So algorithms which provide this kind of solutions are called epsilon delta approximate algorithms. Okay. So this is what we will be looking at for this problem. Okay. So let us first uh, try to design a simple algorithm which has this property. Okay. So you have the stream length of n, and you have distinct elements m. Okay. And suppose you are given a space of s. Okay. Now you already know how to maintain a sample of size s from a given stream. Okay. So suppose you maintain a random sample of size s from this stream. Okay. So, and then at any point in time, suppose you have seen n elements and you have a random sample of size s. Okay. At this point in time, you can count the number of distinct elements in the sample. Okay. So this is in the sample of size s. Okay. And you find out that this is m hat. Okay. So then you can say that your actual m will be m hat times n by s. Okay. So you have seen actually n elements. You have maintained a sample of size s. Okay. So n by s is actually your sort of the factor by which your number of distinct elements should be inflated. Okay. And because you are just maintaining a random sample, okay, uh, you are thinking that uh, if you just inflate the count of distinct elements, okay, then you can get the actual solution. Okay, so the question is this solution good? Okay, so the answer is this solution is good if all the elements, so suppose you have m distinct elements, okay, if all the elements occur roughly equally frequently, okay, so if all of these occur equally frequently, then we are fine, okay, because we will just sample a set, okay, and then exactly your something like your m okay, so your uh, you have a sample of size n, okay, sorry, you have a sample of size s and a stream of size m, and out of this m, okay, uh, you will have sampled something like your uh, you know uh, m into s by n many of this, right? This will be your m hat if all the distinct elements occur equally frequently, okay, uh, because each of these will occur in the sample with probability s by n, right? So you know that when we are maintaining a sample of size s, okay, and you have seen n elements, each element occurs in the sample with probability s by n. Okay, so now what happens if they don't occur equally frequently? Okay, so consider this case, okay, where you have a uh, okay, here the notation is a bit changed, okay, so consider uh, that you have m distinct elements, okay, so these m, and there are n many of them, okay, so this is m minus 1, okay, and this is m and n are switched here, so this will be n minus m plus 1, okay, so you have n minus m plus 1 many of the first element without loss of generality, any one element which is the first element, okay, and then all the other elements from 2 to m minus 1 many elements, okay, they occur, okay, one each, okay. Now consider the case where n is much larger than m, okay, so what is the chance of these other elements occurring in the stream, right? So this is just your what is the chance of these other elements occurring in the sample, okay, so the chance of the one occurring in the sample is your n minus m by n, okay, whereas any of the other elements occurring in the sample is just m by n, okay. So if your m is much smaller than n, this kind of becomes 0 and this kind of becomes 1. So you will see a lot of occurrences of the first element and almost 0 occurrences of any other elements. Okay, so now if you do a distinct count in this particular setting, you will see m hat is equal to 1. So what is the next solution, or rather what is the problem here, right? The problem here is that you are not really considering the identity of the element at the time of sampling. Okay, so you are not considering the identity of the element at the time of sampling. Okay, so how do we do this? So we have to do this. Okay, so at the time of, we have to sample, but at the time of sampling we have to consider the identity of the element. Okay, so the way to do it is to use a random hash function. Okay, so that, so what does this random hash function ensure? This ensures that every element gets mapped to the same index. Okay, so that you do not do any kind of so here, for example, you will do a lot of double sampling of the first element, which occurs many times. Okay, so let us see the algorithm based on the hash function. Okay, so we have seen this is similar to Bloom filter. Okay, so you maintain a bit array B of size m. Okay, so here we have a change of notation. So m is no longer the number of unique elements. Okay, m is like the size of the bit array. Okay, and this bit array is now initialized to 0. Okay, so your hash function is from u to the index of the bit array. Okay, now when we see just like in Bloom filter, so here we are not using multiple hash functions, we are just using one hash function. So whenever we see an element x, we just set b of h of x as 1. Okay, okay, so now let zm be the fraction of 0 entries in this bit array. Okay, so then we return the estimate m log zm by m, minus of m log zm by m, as the uh, number of distinct entries. Okay, so this is the algorithm. Okay, so how did we get here? Okay, so first of all, recall our analysis from the Bloom filter, that the hash function h, okay, so is a uniform random hash function. So probability of h of j, okay, equal to 1, or rather h of x, put it this way, h of x equal to j, okay, is going to be 1 by m. Okay, so for every insertion, the probability of a position remaining 0 is 1 minus 1 by m. Okay, so suppose there are n distinct elements. Okay? So it is basically that you are inserting n elements, okay, or n of them. Okay, so you are making n insertions. Okay, so the number of positions, which will still remain 0 after the n insertions have been made, okay, is 1 minus 1 by n to the power n, which we know we can approximate as e to the power minus n by m. Okay. So the expected number of positions which remain at 0, okay, which is the Zm, which is what we are measuring, is m times e to the power n by minus n by m. Okay. Now remember that n is our number of distinct elements. Okay. So from this we can solve for n. So how do we solve for n? We solve for n as your log of Zm by m and then minus of m times this. Okay. So this is going to be your estimate of number of distinct elements. And we can use tail inequalities to actually show that this is concentrated around the mean. Okay. Uh, now so this method is also sometimes called linear counting. Okay. Uh, yeah. But this is useful when you have memory which is proportional to n. Okay. So if you have memory which is proportional to the number of distinct elements, okay, then this can yield very good results. Okay. Uh, as you can understand, your uh, so so yeah, so you have this log factor which will be estimated. It is like a constant multiplier of m. Okay. Okay. So the question is, can we do better? Okay. So can we not use memory which is linear in the number of distinct elements but somewhat smaller? Okay. So in order to do so, we now go into what is called the Flageolet-Martin sketch. Okay. Now this is this was basically developed in the 1980s by Flageolet and Martin. Okay. So let us see how the sketch works. Okay. So what does the sketch have? Okay. So just like the linear counting, okay, uh, we have here a hash function, okay, from the universe of elements to 2 to the power l. Okay, so here you can think something like m is equal to 2 to the power l. Okay, or l is something like log of m. Okay. Another way to think of this hash function is a L-length bit string. Remember that if you have to encode numbers from 1 to m, okay, you can basically encode them using these L-length bit strings. Okay. Okay. So basically, you basically take the binary representation of the ith integer, and this will be of length, of course, l. Okay. Okay. And let us assume that this h of x is also completely random hash function. Okay, that is that probability of each of these or rather uh, yeah, so each element in u maps uniformly randomly to any one of the 2 to the power elements. Okay, okay, so now consider this function 0 of v. Okay, this is the position of rightmost one, okay, in the bit representation of v. Okay, so uh, another way of thinking about this function 0 of v is it is the maximum I such that 2 to the power I divides v. Okay, so for example, consider the example here. Okay, so this is basically the number. So this is 2 plus 4 plus 16, right? So so this is 22. Okay, now you see what is the maximum I such that 2 to the power I divides 22. Okay, that is just 2. Okay, so zeros of 22 is going to be 1. Okay, another way of looking at it is what is the position of the first one or the rightmost one from right. Okay, uh, and this is, you can see, after 1. So if this has also been 1, then it would have been 0, but now it is 1. Okay, similarly the zeros of this is 3, and you can see that this will be divisible by actually 8. Okay, because neither 1, 2 or 4 are present, so this will just be divisible by 8. Okay, so that is the meaning of this zeros function. Okay, so how do we use this zeros function and this hash function that we have already seen? Okay, so this is the algorithm of the Flageolet-Martin sketch. Okay, so you choose a random hash function, uh, okay, of length L. Okay, and you maintain an integer between 0 to L. Okay, which will basically maintain the position of, so note that zeros of h of x is basically a number between 0 to L, actually 0 to L minus 1, right? Yeah, because otherwise yeah, it could be 0 to L, let's say no, 0 to L minus 1. Okay, okay, so um, okay, so you just initialize this number or this integer number which is from 0 to L minus 1 with 0. Okay, okay, now you want to see, so as you are adding each element x to the sketch, okay, that step is called the process step. Okay, as you are adding each element x to this sketch, you do the following processing. Okay, if zeros of h of x is greater than the current value of z, okay, then you update z, okay, with zeros of h of x. Okay, in other words, at any point in time you can think of z as max over z, which you have seen till now, and zeros of h of x. Okay, so you are maintaining the maximum value that the zeros function will return over the entire string. Okay, so this is what z is maintaining. Okay, at any point in time, z is maintaining the maximum values that the zeros function will return. Okay, when you have basically hashed all the elements using this hash function. Now, the hypothesis is that if you just return an estimate which is 2 to the power z plus half, okay, this is your estimate of number of distinct elements. Okay, or count of distinct elements. Okay, so how is this happening? Okay. Okay, so just to make things slightly clearer, okay, let me do one example. So here I have the elements. So the elements is this blue ball, orange ball, a turquoise ball, and red ball. Okay, and these are, let's say, the hash strings for this set of balls. Okay, so now you are watching elements from here to here. Okay, let's say the stream is going from here to here. So first you see the red ball. So your z is going to be 1. Okay, okay, because zeros of this string is 1. So let us do the zeros here also. So zeros of this is 1. Zeros of this is going to be 2. Zeros of this again is going to be 1. Okay, uh, and zeros of this is going to be 0. So this is zeros of h of x. Okay. So now you see the next element. Okay, and here it is 0, so your z remains 1. Okay, again red, z remains 1. Okay, z remains 1, z remains 1. Okay, now you see the turquoise one, z becomes 2. Okay, so at this point, let me remove it and write z becomes 2. Okay, again z remains 2, 2, 2, 2, 2. Here also this is a new element, but z still remains 2. And okay, so the maximum value of z is 2. Okay, now what is the estimate that you return? You return 2 to the power 2 plus half. Okay, which is 4 into root 2. Okay, so let me put it this way, that 4 root. Okay, what is your actual number of distinct elements? It is 4. Okay, so you see you have a pretty good estimate. Okay, so what is the intuition behind this? Okay, okay, even before the intuition behind, just to clarify, so what is the space requirement of this algorithm? Okay, so now you see your L, or the length of the string, okay, that needs to be some greater than or equal to some C log n. Yes, so here let's say n is the the number of elements that you see, okay, or even it may be the number of elements in the universe. Okay, so this is your L. Okay, so you need to compute of course a string of length L which is of size log n. Okay, but your sketch is actually just log of L size, because you only need to represent a number between 0 to L minus 1. Okay, so your Z should only have log n many bits. Okay, so your total usage is actually from the, so your sketch is just maintaining a log n size data, but you have to compute this intermediate representation which is of size log n. Okay, so that is your space usage. Okay, now why is this happening? Okay, so the idea here is that we know, so we have assumed that the hash values are all uniformly distributed. Okay, so what does this mean? So this means, so suppose, so consider as an example, let's say uh, let's say two length strings. So your L is equal to 2. Okay, so you are just representing numbers between 0 to 3. Okay, so what are the numbers? The numbers are, or what are the string representations of the numbers? 0 0 0 1 1 0 and 1 1. 1 1 corresponds to 3, this corresponds to 2, and so on and so forth. Okay. Now if you choose uniformly at random from these 4 strings, okay, one string, what is the chance that it is divisible by 0, or rather it is divisible by let's say 2? Okay, you see the this is divisible by 2, okay, and this is divisible by 2, so the chance is half. Okay, now consider the same, you just expand it to longer bit numbers. Okay, so what fraction of numbers will be divisible by 4? Okay, so the numbers which will be divisible by 4 will have all the zeros, the last 2 bits always 0, and those will occur, you see, after every, so 0 0 is 1, then again 1 0 0 will occur after every 4 guys. Okay, so the probability of divisible by 4 is 1/4. Okay, divisible by 2 is half. So in general, the the probability that a uniformly chosen string from, now consider all possible strings of length k or length L. Okay, uh, it is divisible by k is going to be 2 to the power k. Okay, and of course we don't expect any of them to be divisible by your 2 to the power L plus 1, because you only have, okay, numbers till 2 to the power L. Okay, so nothing will be divisible by 2 to the power L plus 1, because it, yeah. Okay, so okay, so this is the intuition. Okay, uh, so now let us formalize this intuition. Yeah, so basically here you can understand the intuition is that if you have got a number which is divisible by 2 to the power k, okay, which is what we saw, okay, zeros is maintaining the maximum k such that it is divisible by 2 to the power k, okay. So if we have got something that is divisible by 2 to the power k, most likely you have gone through uh, you know uh, yeah, so you have gone through this yeah, so you have gone through like at least 2 to the power k distinct elements here, okay. So that is the intuition, okay. So only then will you be able to get uh, one element which is divisible by 2 to the power k. Yeah, okay. So how will you formalize this intuition? Okay. So let us set up some notation. So let S be the set of elements that appeared in this string. So this actually we are using this, we are using U for this, okay. And let R be any number from 0 to L minus 1, okay. And let J be any number from you know uh, 1 to n, okay. You can also think like, yeah, okay. So uh, so you can map these 0 to L minus 1 to 1 to L, okay. Okay, now we define this first random variable, okay, xrj, which is an indicator random variable. So it's a 0 1 random variable of zeros of hj greater than or equal to r, okay. So remember there are n elements, okay, okay. So what is the uh, you know so xrj is 1 if zeros of hj is greater than r, okay. So in the representation of hj there are at least r trailing zeros, okay. This is what it means, okay. And we derive another derived variable from xrj which is yr, okay, which is the number of elements j in this 1 to n such that you know uh, this happens, okay. So zeros hj is greater than or equal to r, okay. And so what you can see is that yr is just sum of this, okay, because this is a 0 1 random variable. So it is just adding up the j's for which this xrj is equal to 1, and that gives yr as the count of the uh, elements for which their corresponding representations are divisible by r, okay. And of course z hat be the final value of z after the algorithm has seen all the data, okay. So it has seen the portion of the stream that it is expected to see, okay. Now at this time the claim is that this particular random value event, that the random variable yr is greater than or equal to 0 is same as the event z hat is greater than or equal to r, okay. And okay uh, and equivalently yr equal to 0 is same as the event z hat is less than r. Okay? Remember, z hat is the maximum value of zeros of or maximum values of number of trailing zeros. Okay, so if the number of if there is an element for which the trailing zeros is greater than r, then z hat will be greater than r. But then this count of yr, which is counting the number of elements, okay, number of elements for which the rth, it's like zeros, the zeros of each of that element is greater than r, okay, is that is what is yr. So this will be some positive number, okay. So hence these two elements are same, and if this is 0, that means clearly your you have not seen any element, okay, for which you have more than, so your zeros uh, of those elements is greater than this value r, okay. So then your z hat must be less than r, okay. So these are our events of interest, okay. So we want to bound, okay. So remember, we want to bound the probability of this, and we want to bound the probability of this for some value of r, okay. If we can bound this probability, okay, then we are done, okay. Now how do we bound this, okay? So for this we use this trick called concentration inequalities, okay. So okay, so how do we use this trick of concentration inequalities, okay? So first of all, we know that yr is sum over j in S xrj, okay. So we so expectation of yr is just sum over all the elements expectation of xrj, because xrj is independent, okay. Yeah, so because xrj is independent, okay. Now what is xrj? We know that xrj is 1 with probability 1 by 2 to the power r, okay. uh, that is because of the hash function uniformly generating. So this is uniform hash function, this is due to uniform hash function, right, okay. And it is 0 otherwise, okay. So for any value of r, okay, the probability that you know uh, the hash function that maps this jth element to a number which is divisible by 2 to the power r is basically 1 by 2 to the power r. So this we have seen, okay. So if we do the calculation here, so what is the expectation of xrj? This is just 1 by 2 to the power r. So expectation of xrj is 1 by 2 to the power r, okay. And hence the expectation of yr is just n by 2 to the power r. Okay, so this is the first thing. Okay, the second thing is that we want to uh, estimate the variance of yr. Okay, now again, because it is a sum of independent random variables. Okay, so the variance of sum of independent random variables is sum of variance of those independent random variables. Okay, now variance of xrj is less than or equal to expectation of xrj square. Okay, because this is something like, where if you remember, variance of xrj is equal to expectation of xrj square minus expectation of xrj whole square. If you remember this formula, so then you can always write this less than or equal to this, because the second number is always positive. Okay, if yeah, okay, so this is always less than or equal to this. Okay, so okay, and expectation of xrj square is also 1 by 2 to the power r. Okay, because x is either 0 or 1, so x square is also 0 and 1. Okay, with the same probability. Okay, so this gives us that variance of yr is less than or equal to n by 2 to the power r. So we have two things: expectation of yr is equal to n by 2 to the power r. Okay, okay, and variance of yr is also n by 2 to the power r. Okay, now we want to compute the probability that, so we want to compute, remember, we want to compute these two events: yr is greater than or equal to 0 and yr equal to 0. Okay, which are equivalent to computing probabilities of these events. Okay, okay, so what is the probability of yr greater than or equal to 0? So this is called, so this is same as probability of, sorry, there is no equal to here. Okay, so yr greater than, strictly greater than 0. Okay, this is same as probability of yr greater than or equal to 1. Okay, and this is the first concentration inequality that we will be using. Okay, for any random variable or any positive random variable, yr, remember, is a positive random variable. Okay, uh, probability, so any random variable x, you take any random variable x, probability of x greater than or equal to a is expectation is less than or equal to expectation of x by a. Okay, this is called Markov's inequality. Okay, so this always holds true where x is a positive random variable. Okay, so then we get an upper bound of n by 2 to the power r on this event. Okay, now the second inequality we are going to use is called the Chebyshev inequality. Okay, so what is the Chebyshev inequality? The Chebyshev inequality says that probability that yr minus expectation of yr is greater than or equal to expectation of yr, okay, is less than or equal to variance of yr by expectation of yr whole square. Okay, so this is called the Chebyshev's inequality. Okay, the general form I can write. So Chebyshev's inequality says that probability of basically, so there is a mod here. Mod is important. X minus mu, okay, greater than or equal to, okay, greater than or equal to mu, okay, is less than or equal to variance of x by mu square. So this is the Chebyshev's inequality. Okay. Now the probability of yr is equal to 0, okay, is less than or equal to the probability of yr minus expectation of yr greater than expectation of yr. Okay. Why is this? This is true because if your yr is equal to 0, okay, then your so probability of so then this event is always true. Okay, so this so if yr is equal to 0, then this event is always true. Okay, but the other way is not true. Okay, if this is true, then yr may or may not be equal to 0. So this is a larger event than this event. Okay, so hence the probability of this event is going to be larger than probability of yr is equal to 0. Okay, and this, if we do the calculation here, okay, it turns out to be basically 1 by n by 2 to the power r, which is 2 to the power r by n. Okay, so we have two upper bounds on the two things. Okay, so now we want to connect this to the random variable z. Okay, so now remember, so first let us take the upper bound. Okay, so now you remember that the returned estimate is your n hat is equal to 2 to the power z plus z hat plus half. Okay, so this is your returned estimate. Okay, now consider a to be the smallest integer such that 2 to the power a plus half is greater than or equal to 4n. So let us see this. So this is n. N is your true distinct count. Okay, so somewhere on the right is this 4n. Okay, now consider this, that you have a number somewhere here which is 2 to the power a plus half. Okay, okay, sorry, you have the number here. Okay, the smallest integer a, so this is basically the closest number which is just larger than 4n. Okay, so a a is the smallest integer such that 2 to the power a plus half is just larger than 4n. Okay. So what can we say? Okay. So the probability that your returned estimate n hat is going to be greater than 4n, okay, this is the probability that your z hat is greater than or equal to a, okay. That is because you see your a is the smallest integer such that this is greater than or equal to 4n, okay. So if this is n hat, okay, uh, which is equal to 2 to the power z hat plus half, okay, and this is basically greater than 4n, then your your if your n hat is, yeah, so this is already true, so 2 to the power uh, z hat plus half is greater than 4n, okay, but a is the smallest integer such that 2 to the power a plus half is greater than 4n, so z hat must be larger than or equal to a, okay. This is clear, okay. Now remember from the previous analysis that this event, that z hat is larger than a, is same as the event ya is greater than 0, okay, and the probability of that is less than or equal to n by 2 to the power a, okay. Now what is n by 2 to the power a? So if you so your root 2 times 2 to the power a is greater than or equal to 4n, okay. So n by 2 to the power a is less than or equal to uh, root 2 by 4, okay. So this is less than or equal to root 2 by 4, okay. So we see that using our algorithm, the chance that the returned estimate is greater than 4 times the actual value is less than or equal to root 2 by 4, okay, which is 1 by 2 root, okay. So this is the upper bound. Similarly, we can do the analysis for the lower bound. So again, consider that B is now the largest. So again, you consider the line here. N is there, and now this time I am taking n by 4. Okay. Now B is the largest integer such that 2 to the power B plus half, okay, is just less than, just outside this 1 by 4. Okay. Again, we know that if n hat has to be less than or equal to n by 4, then z has to be less than or equal to b, because b is the largest such integer, okay. And now we know that this event is same as yb plus 1 equal to 0, because z hat is an integer, okay, and this event is same as saying your so this event is same as saying, sorry, z hat is less than b plus 1, strictly less than b plus 1, and hence yb plus 1 should be 0, okay. And the probability of that, as we have seen, is basically less than or equal to 2 to the power b plus 1 by n, okay. This we have seen the last slide, that this is 2 to the power yr is equal to 0 is 2 to the power r by n, okay, and hence this is again less than or equal to root 2 by 4. Okay, so we see that we can use the union bound. Okay, so one-sided bound. So one-sided bound, this holds with probability 1 minus root 2 by 4. This side of bound holds with probability 1 minus root 2 by 4. So both of these hold with probability 1 minus root 2 by 2. Okay, or 1 minus 1 by root. Okay, so this is slightly greater than 0.5. So this is greater than 0.5. Okay, so with probability, so this is, you can think of this as our delta. Okay, and here we are showing bounds. Basically we are showing multiplicative bounds on the returned estimates. Okay, uh, so we can do somewhat more tighter analysis here. So yeah, so we can do somewhat tighter analysis and get somewhat better constants, but essentially we get a constant factor approximation. So whatever your number of distinct elements is, it will not be so remember, this is only taking order log n memory, and it is uh, with probability greater than 0.5. It is saying that you will be within 1/4 of n and 4 times n, where n is your actual value. Okay, so you will be within this interval. Okay, uh, and this is a technical point, that actually even though we assume that our hash functions are random, what we really need is two wise independence, which is a weaker assumption than totally random. Okay, total independence. Okay, so okay, now so the so everything is fine with the thing, except that this probability of 1 minus 1 by root 2 is pretty bad. Okay, so we are, remember, we are getting the estimate n hat within the range n by 4 and 4n. Okay, so this is tolerable, and as we mentioned, we can also tighten this constant. Okay, but this particular probability is very bad, because this is something like, this is just over 0.5, so there is a 50% chance that you will go outside this bound. Okay, so the question is, can we somehow make the probability better? Okay, and this sometimes also called boosting of probability. So this is a common trick in randomized algorithm, which is boosting of probabilities. Okay, so how does this work? Okay, so what you can do, so this is the event that you want to happen, and you know that it will happen with a probability slightly larger than 0.5. Okay, so what you do, you create k parallel estimates. Okay, you create k parallel estimates of z hat. Okay, and hence k parallel estimates of n hat. Okay, and now you return the median of these. Okay, so you return the median of these k estimates. Okay. Now remember that we expect at most, so the probability that you know your uh, yeah, so your n hat will, let's say, exceed 4n, okay, is less than or equal to root 2 by 4. Okay, so if you have k such estimates, okay, okay, how many of them will exceed uh, root 2 exceed 4n? Okay, at the max, root 2 k by 4 will there of them will exceed 4n. Okay, but you see, what is the probability that the median will exceed 4n? For the median to exceed 4n, actually, okay, k by 2 of them have to exceed 4n. Okay, because the median is in the middle. There are k by 2 values on this side, there are k by 2 values on this side. So all these k by 2 values will also have to exceed 4n. Okay, now what we can show using what is called a Chernoff bound, okay, is that this probability is less than or equal to e to the power some constant minus some constant times k. Okay, that the probability that the medium exceeds, so this, what is the probability? Probability that median is greater than 4n. Okay, remember what we have shown previously is that probability that each of the estimates exceed 4n. Here, instead of this number, we had something like root 2 by 4. Okay, now after we have done k of the experiments, okay, the median, the probability that median of those will exceed 4n is now a negative exponential in k. Okay, so this is decreasing very fast with increasing k. Okay, so what do we do? Okay, so if we choose, okay, so again, so just to restate what we have done previously, so we have computed zk and now we are returning the median of these, and the probability that the median will lie in this range is actually 1 minus e to the power omega k. Okay, so but this is our delta. Okay, so suppose you choose your k to be, so basically you can now just, so your delta should be uh, uh, less than or equal to e to the power minus omega k. Omega k is some constant times k, right? So your k should basically be greater than or equal to log 1 by delta. Okay, it's big O because there is a constant. Okay, but essentially your k should be greater than or equal to log 1 by delta. So for example, so how to interpret this? So suppose you want with probability something like let's say 1 by 2 to the power 10. Okay, 1 minus 1 by 2 to the power 10. So this is a very small probability. Okay, so your delta is 1 by 2 to the power 10. So log 1 by delta is basically something like 10. Okay, so if you choose k to be greater than or equal to 10, okay, then you are able to ensure the same bound. Okay, so earlier you were ensuring with probability slightly greater than, so you were ensuring with probability 1 by root. Okay. Now you are able to ensure this with probability 1 minus 1 by 2 to the power 10 if you just choose 10 many of these. Okay, so this is the boosting. So you can run multiple experiments and boost the probability once the probability is greater than 0.5. Okay. Okay, so we to summarize, we have seen the streaming model. Okay, and we have seen some algorithms. One of them is linear counting, which is similar to our Bloom filter. Okay, but you are doing counting. And the second one is, but here you need to store something like so your space required is theta of n. Okay, then you can use this Flageolet-Martin sketch where the space required is actually big O of log of n. Okay, where n is the number of elements. Okay, and you are able to with high probability. Okay, uh, by running so you can say k here, we go of, because you are running k such experiments, so you need to do, but k is a very small number. Okay, and you are able to uh, do the uh, you are able to estimate within constant factor n hat. Within constant factor we have choose taken the constant factor as 4. Okay, but this factor can be tighter, the analysis will become harder. Okay, but at least with a constant factor approximation you can predict this using this Flageolet-Martin sketch with just log of n space. Okay.